Convicted drug dealer Glenn Agliotti has died. It's believed the controversial businessman died in hospital last night. In 2005, Agliotti was charged with planning the murder of mining tycoon Brett Kebble, but was later acquitted. He was also the main state witness against the late former National Police Chief, that's Jackie Selebi, in his corruption case back in 2010. Police in Gauteng have since confirmed an inquest docket into Agliotti's death has been opened at the Douglasdale police station.
Can confirm that an inquest docket has been opened at Douglasdale police station. A post-mortem will be conducted to determine the cause of death.
Let's get more on this story. I am joined by Sean Newman. He's the author of Glenn Agliotti autobiography. Sean, good to have you on the program this afternoon. Now, Glenn Agliotti is a name we haven't heard in the media for quite some time now. Firstly, give us your initial reactions to news of his death.
Well, I heard it a short while ago, and while some may not agree with it, it's incredibly sad because I found Glenn to be just an absolute. I enjoyed his company. He was a gentleman. He had time for everyone, and I think the reason we haven't heard his name for so long is he just got on with life and enjoyed his time with his family, which was everything to him. So I'm a little bit shocked to hear the news today.
Now, you're one of the authors who've penned an autobiography on his life. Firstly, give us some background information on Glenn Agliotti's criminal activities and also his involvement in the drug trade.
Glenn was very circumspect when it came to the drug case. It's worth noting that he was the only one who was convicted in that case. There were multiple accused, and he took the plea bargain and he effectively copped to the crime. And later on in life, he did not have shame to admit that he had made his mistakes. We obviously also know that he was a key state witness against Jackie Selebi, and then was the accused in the Kebble case. And I just think that no matter what, he had the conviction to stand up and admit that he had done wrong, and I suppose not take the medicine that everyone would expect and accept in a case like that. But Glenn lived a bit of a charmed life, and right to the very end, it would appear that he got away with it in many eyes.
Yeah. So we've spoken a bit about some of the specific crimes that he admitted to, and we also remember that he signed a plea bargain. But remind us again, or elaborate on this relationship between Glenn Agliotti as well as Brett Kebble as well. I mean, he did become known as a facilitator between high-ranking officials.
Absolutely. I mean, Glenn had a very good ability to network. He was an orator. He could talk his way in and out of any room. I mean, I saw it plenty of times where he would talk to anyone and everyone, and he had time for everyone. Him and Kebble had a very special friendship, and the way he would tell it is that Brett meant a lot to him. So even when we interviewed him for the book, he was quite adamant that it hurt him very much that he had been accused of murdering him, on the basis, or facilitating the murder, on the basis that he would tear up when speaking about Brett. He and Brett were very good friends. I know that he had cultivated a friendship with Selebi. Many believe that friendship was based on what he could get out of the former police commissioner. But if you knew Glenn, he was one of those he just made friends. He was very amiable and very easy. I still, to this day, believe that the trial for Kebble's murder was a complete waste of time, obviously owing to the result. And I think Glenn really felt, I think, in the time that we spent with him, that the Kebble trial was used as a gateway to get to the police commissioner, and that there were ulterior motives. Whether or not that's true or not is kind of inconsequential in a moment like this. But at the end of the day, he got himself into a lot of situations. There was no two ways about it. I think a lot of them were him over-talking himself and getting himself into trouble. But in the end, I think he he will be remembered by those around him as being a family man. That I think is the biggest shot from my end, is that he loved his family. He really did. His kids were his world, his wife. It was just, that was how he was. And I don't think many people saw that side to him, because he liked to cultivate, he enjoyed playing into the persona of the Don, the landlord, all these monikers. But to see him behind closed doors, that wasn't usually who he would portray.
Let's speak about that now, this nickname, the landlord, and its significance as well. What does it say about his persona, or even his criminal activity as well?
I think I think, again, Glenn can be termed anything, many things in this world, but I think the biggest was probably a hustler.
Yeah.
He could hustle his way through everything. You know, there's many situations, as I've mentioned, where he may have bitten off a lot more than he could chew. And especially in the drug case, I think when sitting and talking to him about it, I think he regretted it in a very large manner, is that he had pushed the boundary one step too far. And that's why he was perhaps later on in life not too afraid to admit to what he did. Ashamed, probably. But in terms of this moniker, I think it was all a persona. It was never the person you met.
Yeah.
So on any day that I met him, he was jovial, he was friendly, he would always have time for anyone around him. I spoke to him last year because there was a child that was going through a surgery that he had, and I just wanted to know who his specialist was, and he would find time. It wasn't an issue. So this idea of what the public saw, this larger than life, Don Agliotti, I think he enjoyed it because it gave him the form of notoriety and fame that came along with it. But I never personally saw him play into it or display those characteristics. He was quite comfortable sitting at a table with, say, a creature and holding his own in a jovial manner and a discussion, as he was to sitting with his kids and around a family table or around friends, or even around strangers, because they gravitated towards him. It was something very, very unique to see. He had this kind of charisma that came about him, and I think it was that charisma and the ability to hustle his way through things that built this persona to this larger-than-life character. But when you broke it down to nuts and bolts, he was just a normal man who I suppose, like most, makes mistakes. His were just slightly larger than others. On a number of times, you've actually spoken about Glenn Agliotti, the family man. Please elaborate a bit further about his personal life and what stood out as you were compiling this book. I think that was some of the hardest stuff to deal with, especially when we discussed the break-in during the Kibble trial. And he was meant to be under house arrest. He was meant to be under 24-hour monitoring by the Scorpions. And intruders gained access to the house. And I think that, to me, was maybe one of the revealing moments. It was the true moment that I saw him break down in tears. That, the Kibble talking about Brett, and then talking about, facilitating this drug deal. But the major thing was the softness towards his kids and his wife. I think at a time like that, when recounting that night and the dangers that his family were in and the anger he had towards these people that had locked him in this house and had put all these, say, protections in place that were false and nobody was watching, to him to not be able to protect his family, to not have any control over the situation, as larger than life and this persona that he was, that was where his vulnerability was his family, his kids, his wife. It was something that came through very, very strongly, that they meant everything to him.
So in extension to that, did he share any conversations with you about exactly how he'd want to be remembered should he die?
I don't think Glenn ever went down that road, because I don't think Glenn ever felt like there was a mortality aspect to him. It's typical with characters like this. there is no mortality. I mean, to get the call today, my first reaction was when asked, can media be handed off to me by an individual, was what has he done wrong? It wasn't that he was dead. I thought to myself, oh no, please, Glenn, what have you done now? Because he's been so quiet for so long. And any time that I did happen to have a catch up with him on the phone, every few months, he was just living his life with his family. So I think Glenn would have wanted to be remembered. He accepted a long time ago that there would be polarizing thought processes and opinions on how he chose to live his life and the situations and the deals that he did and his mistakes. But I think in the end, what would matter to him would be his family and his friends the most, and that he would want to be remembered as somebody who loved completely, laughed jovially, and lived his life and left a story, good or bad. He left a mark somewhere along the line.
Did he in any way say anything about or raise concern about the way that he was portrayed in the media as well? And if so, can you just elaborate on some of those conversations that you had with him?
I don't think so. I found Glenn had this dual personality type situation. You had to break it down from that persona. So to him, when we started the process of the book, it was very much like, and alive, and then you've got to break down the layers to get to the story. I don't think he was a saint by any standard, and I don't think he thought he was. He would definitely never think that he'd be canonized. But I think as a human being, he accepted a long time ago that a lot of people would like him, a lot wouldn't like him, and I think he had a thick enough skin to accept that. And that's why I say, I don't think in this moment he would have really worried about what anyone was thinking. Mm. As from a media point of view, he accepted that if you do wrong, you're going to get it. And that was effectively, I think, he got his just dues in the media. They weren't light on him. But he also speak to many journalists, and they'll tell you he had an incredibly charming side about him. Mm. So he took things in his stride.
Shaun Newman, and just as a parting shot, how would you what message would you like to send to his family, or how do you remember him at this time?
Like I said, I maybe got to see the better side of him. There are many that would say that they didn't, but I enjoyed his company. I enjoyed his insights. Most of all, I enjoyed having the laughs, and to his family, I can imagine as the center pillar of their existence, it's going to be a massive loss. Mm. And, I think at these times, it's just worth remembering that there is a family and that there are those that are grieving him. And it's not always up to us to think that everything was wrong. There was something good somewhere along the line. And, yeah, I'll miss him.
That's author Shaun Newman, of course, paying tribute to Glenn Agliotti. He's one of the authors of an autobiography into his life.